Guys, this podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Wrestling Collector Shop. The next time you're looking to add the newest wrestling figures to your lineup, you've got to go to WrestlingCollectorShop.com. Started by collectors for collectors around the globe, Wrestling Collector Shop has been serving fans the latest and greatest in wrestling action figures since 2002. Whether you're looking for basics, elites, or ultimates, Wrestling Collector Shop should be your first stop the next time you're looking for wrestling figures. So make sure to go to WrestlingCollectorShop.com and use code SWOGGLE to save yourself 10% on your order. Again, that's 10% off with code SWOGGLE only at WrestlingCollectorShop.com. Hey guys! Another episode. Going Postl. This one's just a look back at a part of my life, part of my career. This is Going Postl. I'm Dylan. That's George. George, hit him with it.
What is going on, guys? As always, this podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Wrestling Collector Shop. Make sure to use code SWOGGLE to save yourself 10% on Mattel Basic, Elites, Ultimates, Major Bendies, and a whole lot more over at WrestlingCollectorShop.com. You just heard the ad, and we're doing it again. Now, guys, as always, make sure to go and follow along on all forms of social media at Going Postl Pod, at Dylan Postl. You can check out the free video versions of this show over at youtube.com/Dylan Postl. Dylan also has figure unboxings, video diaries, and a whole lot more over there. For all things Swoggle, you can head on over to DylanPostl.com. And of course, there is ProWrestlingTees.com/Swoggle. And we love to let you guys know that if you head over to SwoggleAuction.com, you can get yourself a free $10 credit over at Whatnot. Dylan, I know that the last Whatnot just happened and it was super successful. When's the next one?
I don't know, George. It's going to probably be the first week of December. Probably that first Wednesday of December, which I believe will be December 4th. It'll either be the 4th or the 11th. One of the two. It'll happen for sure. Either the first or second Wednesday of December.
All right. Man. This is going to be an interesting one, a hard one to follow. We are covering your draft schedule, your switching brands, your just everything.
Before we got on, you were like, "Oh, there's a lot," and I was like, "No, there's not." So I'm very, very excited to hear what you found, and because shocking, I don't remember there being. I know of two switches.
There's one thing we got to do before we get into it, Dylan. What is that?
Ad break. Are you a fan of Disney, Pixar, Jurassic Park, The Office, or even WWE? Or maybe you just want a sleek and comfortable patterned shirt? Then you need to check out Roosevelts.com. RSVLTS.com today. Roosevelts makes the most eye-catching and comfortable shirts going today. Whether it's button-ups, or polos, or hoodies, or even hats, and everything in between, Roosevelt's truly has something for everyone. Made for those with the love of sports, pop culture, and so much more, and above all else, having a kick-ass time. This clothing is for the bold and fun, for those who dare mighty things. Roosevelts.com, check them out.
Here we go, buddy. May 2006. We can't move forward without knowing where you started. You debut on SmackDown paired with Finley. Yeah. That is the little bastard era of Hornswoggle's career.
I was always a SmackDown. When SmackDown started, I was like, man, this show is cool. SmackDown is awesome. New colors, new set, oval set. Then it had a fist. I don't believe I ever entered from the fist. Thank God, I made sure to choose my words wisely there.
What a sentence. That first time, I think that might be a first time anyone's ever said that in the history of...
Man, I loved I loved seeing the fist entrance stage. It was so surreal, like when I first got hired and they were using that one and then seeing it be set up every week. It was so cool. Like just the process of seeing the fist being like taken off the truck and then being put into all the reflective glass shards. I loved watching the rigging every week, the stage rigging. It was always a really, really cool thing for me. But yeah, I started on SmackDown and like I felt for the longest time, it's like, man, SmackDown is our home. Finley was a huge part of SmackDown. Finley was always a mainstay on SmackDown, especially when I was with him then. I was like, that was our show. He was put on that show a lot because I was kind of at times viewed as the B show and had the US title, which he would always be in the mix of. But then he got in the mix of the world title here and there, like with King Booker, he was in it, I think. With Batista, he was in it. There was always a lot of, I just remember SmackDown was like injury ridden. It always felt injury ridden over on SmackDown between Edge and Batista and Ray and then Ken and Undertaker. It was like, man, all of our run was there. It seemed like every few months, one of our main events guys would be injured. And then, so kind of fast forwarding quite a while, I don't know how many. When is the official move to draft?
So, we start May 06, then in September 07 is the illegitimate son storyline.
Yes. So now I hear about the illegitimate son storyline starts, and that's going to be on Raw. And I was like, okay. So, but I'm on SmackDown. And they're like, yeah, you're going to work both. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to work both. That would be taped on Tuesdays to air on Friday, I think. Yeah, because it was Friday night SmackDown. And then so I would be on the road. I'd get on the road for house shows Saturday. I'd have a house show Sunday. Then I would go to Raw Monday. And then I would go to SmackDown TV Tuesday. So sometimes there would be a SmackDown house show. Because back then it was branded house shows too. It was one set of Raw house shows, one set of SmackDown house shows. And so during that time, there might have been SmackDown house shows going on when I had to have been at Raw. So that I would just go to Raw then. I remember and then being like, oh man, now I'm working both TVs. So it was never like a brand switch. It was just an additional day of work. But it was whenever you do that kind of stuff, especially back then, because the brands were legitimately split. There's people on Raw that I never worked with and never was around. And so getting to know that, that locker room and that roster was cool. And it was neat to see their connections in that within.
Any standout moments or differences within the locker rooms that you noticed, or new friendships that kind of came out of nowhere that you weren't expecting?
Not really. I will say me and Regal's friendship, we when I started working with him a little more during the Vince angle and that, and we became closer during that. Coachman, Jonathan Coachman, during the Vince stuff, we became very, very friendly and we became buddies because man, it seemed like every week I was doing something with Coach. But yeah, no, nothing that I can think of standout locker room wise. But as I was saying, we took Smack, but then it was after that, I just was after the Vince angle, it was oh nope, back to SmackDown. And it was a crazy thing because it was almost like stuff on SmackDown wasn't affected by the Vince storyline. I would just be out with Finley. And then on Raw, it would just be me. It was very, very weird. House shows, same Finley business. But and then in the beginning of the angle, I think Finley was still a heel. In the beginning of the angle of the Vince angle, Finley was still a heel. And so it kind of turned him. the thing kind of turned him. I could be wrong, but for some reason I remember there being weird transitions on the house shows of me being treated as a babyface with Finley, who is still being in matches as a heel. We did so much. I was just, man, the amount of house shows we did against Kane. I think it was Kane and Kali were easily, and no, Kane, Kali, Mark Henry were the three we definitely worked with most on house shows. Kane, as we were heels against Kane, and then Kali and Mark Henry were baby faces.
You say that your memory isn't great, but the last couple episodes, man, you've been doing pretty good.
I've been okay.
And then March 2008, you are once again reunited with Finley.
Yep.
Then April 28th, you have a match against Matt Stryker back on SmackDown.
I was thinking I was drafted and then just randomly did a smack. Okay, no.
And then June 2008, there is the supplemental draft, and you, along with Finley, are drafted to ECW. And this is something that you had said was one of the major things that you wanted to talk about, because I think you have mentioned it on the podcast once before, that maybe there's not enough ECW content to do a whole episode.
There might be. I don't know if there is. You'll have to look at what I all did. I don't know if there is. So we found, Fit told me during the day that we were getting drafted, and schedule wise, it wouldn't affect me because SmackDown and ECW were both taped the same day on Tuesdays. So it wouldn't affect me whatsoever, scheduling wise. But I was like, oh man, what are they going to do with him? What's going to go on here? And then I realized, it's to work with, we thought was the younger guys, same as we were doing on the house shows. Finley, when he turned babyface, was the ultimate, like, hey, we have this guy from developmental that we really want to try to bring up to TV. Let's get 3 weekends of house shows against Fit out of him and to see if he's got it. Because Fit was a producer and in ring as well. So he could kind of give him the lowdown. So we went to ECW, and I remember immediately it was like, we did stuff. I was like, I felt like it was right off the bat. It was like, oh, Mark Henry. Yep. It's Fit and Mark Henry. And then I was like, oh, who else is there? And that was it. It was Mark Henry and Tony Atlas. We were paired with for what I feel like was forever. I don't know on television who else we would have worked besides. I know. Miz and Morrison.
We worked with them quite a bit. Title match against Miz and Morrison.
We worked with Miz and Morrison quite a bit. On house shows too. I started doing matches on house shows against them. I don't even know who else we would have worked. I remember like Fit was in a 5-way with Matt Hardy and Evan Bourne. Chavo was probably in that. I don't know who else Finley would have worked on ECW.
Let's see. I'm gonna pull up I'm gonna pause for the cause here, and I'm gonna pull up your full match history.
I don't know if I would have had 2 matches on ECW. Miz and Morrison, and maybe a tag against Tony Atlas and Mark Henry.
So you have 6-7-08. Hornswoggle defeats Armando Estrada.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
Then you have 6-8-08. Armando Estrada. Then you have.
You know what? Also, that was we also Tyson Kidd and Natalia were on ECW.
Yeah.
Now it makes sense. So that was the end of our run, because that's what I kind of wanted to talk to about the ECW run too, especially was the end of it. You know, having a little like 2 or 3 week program with Tyson Kidd and Natalia, which would end up being before I then got drafted again. But I remember like ECW, literally the standout being working with. We worked Armando on house shows a few times, I know as well. But I remember the standout being just constantly with Mark Henry and Tony Atlas.
And then at a SmackDown ECW live tour in Germany, it says Finley and Hornswoggle defeat Kurt Hawkins and Zack Ryder.
That would have been around the time. Oh yeah, no, we did a whole tour with them. We would have still been on SmackDown though. I remember we wrestled Hawkins and Ryder a lot on house shows. We would always do the so we always had a spot where I would just like stop the match and just start juggling, and then I would pelt the tennis balls at the other guys. And I remember the one at Hawkins would just be a nice toss, and I would rifle one of the tennis balls at Zach's balls every time. So it'd be like Ryder would get one to the balls. Boom. Hawkins, nice, easy one. So always 3 balls. Hawkins, nice, easy toss at the chest, and just Roger Clemens pitch another one at Zach's balls. That I remember. Yeah, we wrestled them a good amount of times on house shows. I didn't realize it was that late because I would have thought it would have been like before we got drafted to ECW, because we did some stuff with Edge. I remember doing some stuff on TV with Edge, and like me being grabbed by Hawkins and Ryder for a spear, and then someone making the save, or if maybe Finley made the save.
So there is on the 7/15/2008 episode of Raw, it says special guest referee Edge, and then Hawkins and Ryder defeat Finley and Hornswoggle. And that is a Friday night SmackDown in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yep. Now I remember that. Yep.
From there, unless you have more ECW stuff you want to talk about.
No, like I say, I just remember kind of Finley being in the title picture, but never. I remember what were the matches? Were they called? No, not beat the clock. Were they called just scrambles when there was like
championship scramble matches?
Yeah, they had a whole pay-per-view of them one time, I think. They had like every title was in one. Finley was in one where I think it was Finley for ECW. It was Finley.
At 2000 Unforgiven 2008, Chavo, Matt Hardy, Mark Henry, and Finley.
Oh, it was a 4-way. Okay. I remember that match. I remember him being involved with the ECW title. I remember, like specifically, I remember the day where it was Mark Henry and Dreamer, I think, or something around that, where they changed the title from the ECW title to the silver ECW title, the huge one. And I was like, man, that's not a good looking title. I'm sorry. I love title designs. I'm a huge fan of title designs. That wasn't it. But it's iconic because you remember it.
I was just going to say, it's one of those things where we're talking about it now, all these years later.
It's but remember, everyone hated the copper titles forever, and then the copper titles were just a thing.
Those copper tag titles are some people's favorite, with like the Spartan helmets. Those are some people's favorite tag titles of all time.
And then hearing that we're going to be working with Tyson Kidd and Natalia, and we did so many house shows with them. Just so much fun. I think that was really where Tyson Kidd and Natalia and I's friendship really, really bloomed, was working on house shows and working side by side against them and with them. And it was instant friendship with both of them. And it was great. It was awesome. I loved it. And then I remember hearing, because it was in London, and I got word that we're going to do a double taping of SmackDown and ECW. And we're going to be doing a double taping because it's going to be, I'm pretty sure it was a double taping. Or I was on ECW and SmackDown. I forget, but I remember there was like 2 matches that night that I was involved in. I had one, and then I was in with one with Finley or something. And I remember hearing like, hey, we're doing this because you're being drafted. And I remember Fit telling me, and I don't think I ever cried in front of Fit until this moment. And I remember like crying to Fit. And I go, no, I don't want to go. And he goes, what do you mean? No, it's going to be fine. I said, I don't want to go. He said, you're coming with me. And it was literally like a child moving to college. Like, that's how I can like visualize it. And like, because I remember him telling me, and I'm going, okay, but what are we going to do? He goes, I'm not going. And I remember that's when it hit me. I like started crying. I was very emotional about it, because I was like, man, what am I going to do? And he goes, so then he revealed to me, he goes, hey, they want you to work with Sheamus. Sheamus is going to debut on Raw. They want you to manage him. They want you to be his guy to really make him that babyface. And I was like, and I literally said, can't you come too and like we can be a thing? And he goes, no, I'm going to stay on ECW. They want me on ECW. You're going to go to Raw. Fuck, was I pissed. I just, not like, it was like pissed at first and then mad and like sad and confused and all of this. I was like, and in all reality, I should have been happy. I'm being thought of in this opportunity to get another guy over because of how I am at that time and how I'm being viewed and portrayed at that time and how people are backing me at that time. I should be happy about that, but I was not in the least. And it really sucked. Like so I remember like then our last match, again, I can't think if it was a tag or if it was singles, but they go, yeah, Fit's going to sing Irish Eyes Are Smiling in the middle of the ring. And I was like, what? And then he goes, yep, they want me to sing. And so I remember the match happened 1, 2, 3, and then this, and then I was because that was, oh, I know why, because that episode aired after the draft. That's what it was. So that was our final goodbye, was him and I in that after that match, and that was and then we hugged, and I remember like he was singing that song, and he was so uncomfortable, and they did it to him to make him uncomfortable. 100%, they did it to mess with him, like always. But he killed it. I remember hugging him at the end, and we were both like, we're crying. And I remember going, I hate this. He goes, I know. I said, I'm going to miss you. And he goes, I love you. And it was like a very like legit father-son sending off to college hug. And I was like, so emotional. I'm like getting emotional thinking about it because, man, it was such a time where I should have been happy. And I was so worried because he was my life jacket. He was everything. And I'm getting thrown in the ocean with nothing, literally nothing besides a possible, or that is this plan of being with Sheamus. Then, because of the way I live this way, because of things like this, they take the oar away and they tell me the Sheamus thing is not happening. So now I'm on Raw with legitimately nothing.
This is April 2009, was the supplemental draft where you get drafted to Raw without Finley. But it does eventually lead into something that we talked about a couple weeks ago.
It's great. But the issue is, like, why did you move me if that wasn't the for sure thing? And I get it's never a for sure thing. I get that. But man, it sucked. But then you look at it and it's into the guest host stuff. And immediately working with every guest host, then working with Chavo, and then going into the DX storyline and all of that. So it panned out and it worked out. But I remember at first being like, you guys screwed me. Like, you took me from Fit, and then Fit did really nothing over on ECW. And it was, I was bummed out for him because he just kind of floundered over there, and it was, I don't know. I just felt bad for him. I really, really felt bad. Because then I never saw him either. I would hardly see him anymore. And that sucked too. That's why it was a cool moment. It was a cool moment. That next WrestleMania, before it was the Andre and just the WrestleMania Battle Royal, they did a thing, and it was in Phoenix where I had a splash off. It was Finley was then there with Mike Knox. And he ended up hitting Knox down, boom, and now I come up off the top, and we have a hug moment at Mania after in that. And I was like, that was a cool little nod because neither of us would have done anything otherwise. So, yeah, I just going to Raw, being drafted to Raw. I remember being like, okay, this isn't happening. You guys really fucked me here. Like, I knew it. I knew it was going to happen, and it did.
So that was April 2009, and then April 2010, in the WWE Supplemental Draft, you get drafted back to SmackDown.
I do?
Yeah, because then in October of 2010, you are named the official mascot for SmackDown in bragging rights.
So this is where I was confused in all of this. Because I was like, how did I get back to SmackDown? And I don't remember being drafted at all. So, guys, I was doing good on memory the last 2 episodes. Here it is, where I remember.
You don't have to remember every single aspect of your career, Dylan.
I understand that. But this is a big schedule change that I should remember, and I remember. So what do you think the last thing I would have done on Raw was?
So let's see. It's Chavo, and then Chavo leads into DX, right?
Yeah, but then was there just nothing? Because then I went to SmackDown. I remember like doing some things still in my DX shirt. I remember doing a thing with Christian on SmackDown early when I got. Now that you say that, Christian and Dolph early on SmackDown because I didn't really have gear. I just had my DX stuff.
It looks like the last thing you may have done was the DX and Hornswoggle against Big Show, Miz, and John Heater.
I bet. Because then they got into Sirius storyline, and then they got into Shawn retiring storyline. Because it was Sheamus and Triple H at that Raw. Or at that Mania. Yep. And I was never with them anymore. Because in the WrestleMania picture, I'm wearing my DX stuff in that Mania picture. Okay, and then I would have been drafted. When was that draft? When was that next draft?
So that is April 2010 is the draft Mania. Back to SmackDown, yeah.
Right after Mania. Okay.
Bragging rights official team mascot for SmackDown.
Yep, I remember that, and the reason that happened was because I thought there was one on Raw or something, and I was like, I remember going to Vince's office and being like, hey, I would love to be a mascot for the team. I got nothing going on right now. I would love. And then he had me like paint my face and wear a Viking helmet for no reason. Like, what?
Well, you gotta look like a mascot.
What the hell is a Viking to SmackDown though? There was no Vikings on the team.
Could have made you dress up like a giant fist.
I would have loved that. That would have been really funny. The fist wasn't around anymore, but I'm still carrying on the legacy of the fist. I just remember it was so random that I was just like had blue face paint and a Viking helmet on. Like, but okay, I got on pay-per-view. I'm fine with it.
Then after bragging rights, March 2011 starts what we talked about. It's available in the archive as NXT Redemption. Then after NXT, you go back to SmackDown.
I was never drafted to NXT. I just was not used on SmackDown.
No, you were just a part of the NXT Redemption storyline. But then during that, or at the end of that, you say you're going back to SmackDown.
Yep. Okay.
But that's March 2011. And then July 2012, you're back on Raw because you are revealed as the anonymous Raw general manager.
Oh, but that doesn't count. We're not counting that. We're not counting that as a switch. That's an appearance. I have signed the WWE Encyclopedia under the Raw GM, the anonymous GM page, a lot. Man. Yeah, I totally forgot about that because it was just like a one-off. And it would have been more. And it was going to be more. But it's not. That would have been a whole nother switch. Now that you say that,
that would have led into, had you been able to do the Big Nick thing, yeah, that would have been another switch. You would have been on Raw permanently, or for the length of that story, and that would have been another switch.
Wow, I didn't even think about that.
But then there's the official return, which is November of 2013. You return to Raw, and then that begins your run with Khali and Natalya.
I remember getting the Big E thing. I remember happening for either my knee or my shoulder for surgery. I had to have surgery on my knee or my shoulder. So what's that? I mean, the next thing was being drafted to the firing squad. Is that's my next draft?
On the Monday Night Raw on April 23rd, it says Brodus and Hornswoggle defeat Ziggler and Swagger.
Yep.
And then by December, you're on SmackDown.
Yep.
With Khali and Natalya.
Okay.
And you're working with Epico and Primo.
Yep. And Rosa.
And
Yep.
And then that transitions into what the next step is, which is your time off, and then, what
I get
happens
fucking
after
fired, George? Is that what you're trying to say?
that? Yeah.
I'm drafted
Yeah.
to not getting paid by them anymore for a while. Yeah, man, I legitimately didn't think there was that many back and forths at all, especially towards the end of the not being like drafted, of just like, hey, you're going to be here now. Man, I can't believe I completely forgot about that I was drafted back to SmackDown. That's mind-boggling to me. Does not shock me. But yeah, it's a lot of back and forths. And like I said, the one that really, really stands out, obviously, is being moved to Raw from ECW and away from Finley, just because of how scary and like unnerving that really was for me. Being taken away from my life jacket. So, yeah. I liked that episode. That was a lot of fun to look back at and think like how much back and forth there really was.
There was one thing that happens, an appearance that you were another mascot at WrestleMania 28. You were the team mascot for
Team Teddy.
For Team Teddy, yeah.
Yep, because I knew Vicky Guerrero was Team Johnny's mascot. And I went to Vince and said, hey, I can wave a flag. I would love to be Team Teddy's mascot. God damn, that's great. Yep. Guys, let's talk about Mad Cat Beard Care. They make my beard feel soft, silky smooth, and they can do the same for yours. A one-man show since 2019, Mad Cat uses a portion of their sales to care for local stray cats. That money covers their medical bills and finds them safe spaces and forever homes. Their products are made to order with vitamins and all-natural oils that promote strong, healthy hair and moisturize your skin as well. They've got exclusive scents for myself, as well as other wrestlers like my good pal Brian Myers, Mr. Kennedy, and Ring of Honor legend Delirious. Make sure to check out all of their scents, along with my Swoggle scent, which has notes of lavender and sage. I absolutely love this scent. And guys, we've got an exclusive offer for listeners of Going Postl. Use promo code SWOGGLED to save yourself 15% on your orders only at madcatbeardcare.com. That is Swoggled with a D on the end to save yourself 15% on your orders at madcatbeardcare.com. Guys, that's 15% with promo code SWOGGLed. And remember, the Mad Cat makes a happy beard. Guys, thank you. Thank you all once again for another episode of Going Postl. Next episode, we might have another small talk. Guys, thank you. Thanks for joining along. At Dylan Postl on all forms of social media. At Going Postl Pod on all forms of social media. DylanPostl.com for my merch. My anything that is not Pro Wrestling Tees related. Then you can go to ProWrestlingTees.com/Swoggle for my Pro Wrestling Tees designs from this show, designs from my personal wrestling, designs from State of Affairs, which we'll have more updates in the very near future. I promise you. I know you're hankering. So are we. We're figuring it out to make it the best possible show for your enjoyment. Whatnot. $10 free on Whatnot, the next stream happening in December. SwoggleAuction.com. Sign up there. Sign up today. Sign up now. Get yourself $10 free. George, what did I forget?
If you wanted to, you could leave us a review and a rating on Apple Podcasts.
16 seconds.
That's it. And if your review gets read on the podcast, Dylan, what do they get?
A free signed 8x10. A free signed 8x10. Leave a review and you get a signed 8x10.
And of course, in addition to leaving a review, you can also make sure to like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell if you're watching the video version of this show. We really do appreciate it. It feeds the algorithm. It helps Swoggle's channel grow. It helps get more eyes on the show. If you wanted to, you could check out patreon.com/PodXchange, PodXchange. That is ad-free episodes, as well as exclusive content from this show, State of Affairs, which is Dylan's other show, coming back very, very soon, and my podcast, which is the Game Marks podcast, and I know Dylan's about to ask me because he's so good at letting me plug my podcast on this podcast. But that show is a video game podcast. It is myself and former Create a Pro champion Johnny Clash. But on this podcast, he goes by
Carouse.
And like I said, we cover a different wrestling video game each and every week. If you like video games, you can check us out at Game Marks Pod, and we are available wherever you choose to listen to your podcast. But with that, Dylan, there is nothing left to do but to give them that signature chef's kiss sign off. What do you got? Some words of wisdom, some pop punk lyrics, a thumbs up. What are we doing?
I was trying to think of a very good 98 Degrees song, but I could not think of a very good 98 Degrees song. Da-da-da-da-da-da. You don't have to think twice, and I will love you still. From the depths of my soul, you're beyond my control. I've waited so long to say this to you. If you're asking, do I love you this much? Well, baby, I do. I didn't have it, but then I had it.